Late last year, I put out a leak summarizing upcoming EPYC, Threadripper, and Xeon releases in an attempt to prepare people for what they should expect out of high thread count products from both AMD and Intel over the coming years. And in my opinion, the biggest news that came out of that leak was actually something that a lot of websites curiously don't even acknowledge yet. That's that Granite Rapids, the successor to Emerald Rapids, which comes out after what just launched, Sapphire Rapids, Granite Rapids goes up to 128 cores. Now, this product is expected by people at Intel to make up a lot of lost ground in server performance against AMD, which is busy raffle stomping basically everything Intel has and the most important performance niches in server. Now, interestingly though, back when that leak came out, a lot of my AMD contacts were basically disregarding Granite Rapids. They were mostly concerned with Diamond Rapids, which they thought could be a real threat, but everything before that, AMD engineers basically looked at as different versions of the same picture. Sure, Intel every year was increasing core counts in IPC little by little here and there, but AMD was doing more, and the things that they had been warned by other people at AMD regarding Diamond Rapids, that's the only one that sounded like an architecture that would actually possibly catch up to their ambitious design goals of said year. And I think this mindset at AMD comes from some pretty severe underestimating of both what Intel plans to bring with Granite Rapids, which has been redefined from its initial design, and also they're probably underestimating how much effort Intel's foundries are putting into getting back on track and competing with TSMC. But before I get into that, I actually want to do something that I think I've neglected to do in a lot of my recent videos. Let me recap what these codenames are very quickly because, well, I just said Redwood, Cove, Emerald Rapids, Sapphire Rapids. I just said a bunch of crap that a lot of you probably aren't keeping track on because it's not your job. So let me just remind you where Intel stands in server right now. So right now, not really in 2022 as Intel was trying to argue last year, but really at the beginning of 2023, Intel has launched the up to 60 Golden Cove core Sapphire Rapids. Now, Golden Cove is the same architecture roughly that's what's used in Alder Lake. This is just the server variant of that. And then coming later this year is 64 core Emerald Rapids, also based on the same node. It's not really expected to be a winner. It's not really expected to make up any ground against AMD because right now Sapphire Rapids is already overall for what most server customers purchase a chip for, overall losing to Genoa. By the end of this year, AMD will have 128 core Bergamo and V-cache laden Genoa-X. And so, yeah, Emerald Rapids bumps up IPC, core counts, and clock speed slightly, but that's not going to make up for the fact that AMD's adding way more than a few cores to Bergamo and adding V-cache to Genoa. And actually, now let me throw on some of the core counts that I've annotated so you guys can more easily keep track of where Intel is. Right, so there's 60 core Sapphire Rapids, which is actually, it's funny to note that this was going to be up to 56 cores. They were going to, by default, disable 4 cores, but it came out so late that they could just enable all 60 cores on low volume models because 10 nanometer yields were way better than they expected for the time it eventually came out. I'll be talking more about Intel's Foundries later in this video. But then, yeah, then you see 64 core Sapphire Rapids by the end of this year. That's not going to do anything against AMD. And then next year, as I've already leaked, 128 core Granite Rapids, also assisted by Sierra Forest. And I think I'm actually the first person to leak this. I figured I'd just get it out now. Right now, you should expect Sierra Forest to have at least 344 cores. These are little cores in the top model. Now, notice these are enhanced little cores over what's in Golden Cove right now, though. You can think of these as probably better than Skylake cores, and there's at least 344 of them organized into 4 86-core tiles. That's at least what they'll have. They're also working on a design that has 4 times 132 core tiles, and then they would disable one cluster, one quad-core cluster per tile to get to 512 cores. It's not decided if they'll be able to launch this insane 512-core product, but there's a chance they will, and they will at least launch a 344-core product. And then after that, well, they'll have Clearwater Forest, which I'm not ready to talk about, and Diamond Rapids, which I'm also not ready to talk about. These products are expected around 2025, 2026, and really not kidding. Diamond Rapids core counts, it is complicated. That's going to take a whole video to explain this radical architecture design by Jim Keller. But yeah. If we then look at what AMD has planned, it should become obvious to you that right now, Intel is just behind. They have a massive core count and largely IPC deficit compared to AMD, but if they could get everything out on time over the next few generations, I actually think they could catch up sooner rather than later to AMD. But it all hinges on Intel executing well, because if any more of these products have a Sapphire Rapids-like launch, which just came out now, that should have come out at least a year ago, if they have Granite Rapids not come out next year, but actually come out like late 2025, yeah, then it'll be competing with Zen 6, and I will become genuinely worried if Intel's going to run out of money and have to start axing killer products because the company's just like going bankrupt. That is what I'm worried about. But I actually don't think that's likely to happen. What I think is likely to happen is for this entire year, most people are going to look at Intel and go, oh my God, this is a bloodbath. Oh my God, Intel's doomed. Things are falling apart, and just disregard what they have coming out. That's kind of what I hear from AMD engineers. But from what I'm hearing, things are more on track next year than people might be expecting. Some of those products also sound way better than what I'm hearing a lot of people online expecting. And so, yeah, we should get into it then, shouldn't we? I'm going to leak details about upcoming Granite Rapids and Redwood plus Cove products, but first, an ad from a sponsor. Jesse here requires lots of maintenance, food, playtime, and lots of walks and runs during the day, and usually also during the night. Your PC's a lot like Jesse, and if you're someone looking for a one-stop shop for everything you might want to keep maintenance on your PC, whether that's keeping performance as high as possible or protecting it from online threats, consider Iolo System Mechanic. This piece of content is brought to you by Iolo System Mechanic, a piece of software that aims to keep your PC running fast, protect it from malware, and also keep your identity protected while browsing online or downloading and streaming data over the internet. System Mechanic Ultimate Defense also works on 10 simultaneous devices with a single license, and they offer 24/7 customer support from this company based in Los Angeles. Don't wait until you need a boost or after you've gotten malware. Use my code Moore's Law for 60% off System Mechanic Ultimate Defense and 30 days of free 24/7 live tech support. Clicking on this link in the description and using the offer code Moore's Law directly helps support the channel, and, well, I'd really appreciate it. And you also might appreciate boosting the performance of your PC while protecting yourself online. Try Iolo System Mechanic today. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the Intel Granite Rapids leak from January 2023. We're already in a new year, guys. And I will start with a disclaimer like I usually do in my leak slide videos. So the people I speak to at Intel openly admit that they are behind AMD in server this year, and they do not expect Emerald Rapids to make up any ground relative to what AMD will have by the end of this year. By that, they mean, and I mean, that they know Sapphire Rapids and the most important performance metrics that server customers are looking for, they know that's behind Genoa. And while Emerald Rapids is, of course, better than Sapphire Rapids, they know that that will be competing with Bergamo and Genoa-X, and it's going to be an even worse bloodbath. This is important for me to point out because it highlights that my Intel contacts are not just all lollipops and rainbows. They know they're behind, and they know things are going to get worse this year. It's Intel marketing that tells you Intel's always the best, not Intel engineers. However, these same people that say they are behind right now, they want and they do expect it's possible for Diamond Rapids to have a clear performance per socket leadership by the time it comes out, which is supposed to be by early 2026. Although I am told that Pat is pressuring the design team to move up the release to the end of 2025. But yeah, so that's neither here nor there. They expect to be in the lead within about 2.5 years from now, and they want Granite Rapids that comes out right before Diamond Rapids to at least trade blows with Zen 5 and make it so that they're not being perceived as behind anymore, that they're at least tying AMD. Now, what is this Granite Rapids product? Well, at least on server, it is comprised of 3 44-core tiles. Now, that means that technically, Intel could launch a 132-core SKU in limited numbers if they wanted to, much like they actually have launched a 60-core variant of Sapphire Rapids, despite it only initially being planned to go up to 56 cores. They always planned to disable 4 of those 60 cores for yields. It's just it came out so late they didn't have to. That could happen with Granite Rapids, depending on how Intel 3 plans out. Now, It will go up to, as of now though, the plan is 128 cores. And the way I am told they're going to do this is disable 1 or 2 cores, depending on the tile and the configuration, for a total of 128 cores on Intel 3 node. And each of these cores uses the Redwood plus Cove architecture. Redwood Cove will debut with Meteor Lake near the end of this year. It's expected to have an at least 15% IPC increase. This is a better variant of that, should have an even higher IPC increase. I'm not going to say what that will come to total because I don't have an exact number, so I'd be lying. But what that means is if they expect at least 15 to 25% with Redwood Cove over Raptor Cove, which is, of course, in Raptor Lake right now, then I think it's pretty easy to conclude that Granite Rapids over Emerald Rapids will bring in Alder Lake over Sky Lake like IPC increase, and that's really exciting. But anyways, in addition to 3 compute tiles, Granite Rapids has 2 I/O dies that are not manufactured on Intel 3, but manufactured on Intel 7 like their existing CPUs are. And so, yeah, I've said enough. Let me now show you on screen a very rudimentary outline of how Granite Rapids is organized. So like I said, it's got 3 different compute tiles on Intel 3, and then 2 I/O dies made on Intel 7, and each of those I/O dies has a 6-channel memory controller for 12 channels total. Now, I'm told that the plan right now, at least, is to disable 2 of the cores in that central tile, and then 1 of the cores in the outer tiles. I didn't ask really why, but I have multiple people confirm this, and I don't know. It's just an interesting and odd architecture, guys. And so, yeah, it has 12 channels of DDR5 total. It has PCIe Gen 5, of course. In later videos, I'll confirm how many lanes it has. It's actually complicated what they can be used for. And it also has a new generation of CXL and next-gen platform firmware resiliency for security, and HBM variants are planned. And this thing is targeting the first half of next year for launch. And I understand how crazy that sounds with how delayed Sapphire Rapids is, but basically the delays to Sapphire Rapids have pushed back the release of Emerald Rapids, and at the same time, it sounds like the Foundries are doing great work right now, and the design work for Granite Rapids is going way better than Sapphire Rapids at the same time. So because Emerald Rapids is pushed back so far, because Granite Rapids, which is this leak, is going so well, they're going to launch pretty close to each other. And I'll talk in a second about what would explain how this is even possible to have so many issues before and why they might not be happening as often with these upcoming products. Now, before that, though, I want to talk about Granite Rapids Workstation. And so I'm going to put that little diagram on screen. So this is the server variant. The successor to Fishhawk Falls, which I've already leaked, will have a 24 and 34 core variant. I am told they're going to remove one of the I/O dies and remove one of the compute dies for a total of 86 cores for HEDT or Workstation customers, which is a massive increase in core counts gen over Fishhawk Falls. Now, I, of course, can't promise that Intel won't disable more cores in the final version or reduce the design to just 1 tile. They absolutely could. Maybe they'll decide to go down to, I don't know, like 84 cores or 80 cores. Maybe they'll decide to only give you one of those compute tiles, but at least right now the plan is up to 86 cores. And I think the reason it's such a giant increase is because they know by the time this thing comes out, it could be competing with, well, at least 128, if what not 192 core Zen 5 HEDT products. And so they want to make sure that they are competitive with what a core count overwhelming majority of people don't need any more than. I don't think most people need more than 32 cores, so they're going to not 86. And then, yeah, 1 I/O die, 6-channel memory controller, and it's too early for me to say anything about clock speeds with authority, but they're hoping to have above 5 gigahertz boost clocks with this thing. Meteor Lake should have the regression. They're hoping to have that all sorted out with Intel 3, but it really is too early to say what the boost clocks will be on these products just yet. All right, now, let's get a little bit into why Sapphire Rapids had so many delays, why so many Intel products have had delays, and why future products might not. And this has come from a lot of discussions in the past month with Intel sources about what literally exactly specifically went wrong here. And it seems like Intel's foundry teams are actually kind of killing it right now, and they're fed up with the design teams. I've even had people in Intel's design sides mad at other design teams for running into tons of flaws, bugs with multiple step-ins. Basically, what I'm told is going on is in the past, people at Intel's design would make something, go to the foundries, and if something was wrong, they'd ask the foundries to adjust the node and help them fix the bugs. Right now, Intel's changing how things work. So, for example, Sapphire Rapids required far more steppings than anticipated. They kept submitting the design, it had bugs, and they had to redo it again. And that happened so many times that it's come out over a year late. That's not because of the 10 nanometer node. That's actually kind of ridiculous to say that. The 10 nanometer node's been clearly working since Tiger Lake, then Alder Lake, now Raptor Lake. Sapphire Rapids isn't coming out in 2023 because of the 10 nanometer node. Its yields are fine. It's the design team and how many steppings they needed to get the thing working that caused it. And with Meteor Lake, which was they were hoping to have come out in the first half of this year, but now seems like it's Q3 or Q4 this year only for laptop. It's again yield problems, but not because of the Intel 4 node, which was completed at the end of last year. No, it's not because of that. They have packaging issues when they package all these tiles together. There are problems. Or again, too many steppings and from design flaws. And so I have a lot of people at the foundries that are saying, dude, if they could just get these things done correctly, then this thing would be out this quarter, but it's not going to be because of problems with the design teams. And so moving forward, Intel is rethinking how they allow their design teams to operate with foundries. They are being treated like outside customers. This is for two reasons. Basically, Intel wants to be more ready to accept outside customers. And also, they think that they'll have less delays if their design teams don't treat the foundries like they're subordinate employees. They want you to take proposals to the foundry like they're an outside customer and make sure you're dotting your I's and doing everything perfectly, submitting it to the foundries, and then they make it. The foundries are not there to clean up your issues in the design teams. Design teams get your stuff done correctly, then the foundries will make it to the design rules they told you already you have to meet. That's what Intel's changing. That's why it sounds like so many products, not maybe this year, but in the next few years, are actually going to be on track. That's where all these issues recently have been coming from. And so, yeah, as far as I'm hearing, Granite Rapids is progressing perfectly on schedule. This is a far cry from the just nightmare scenarios I was hearing while Sapphire Rapids was being worked on. It does not sound the same. And they really think they can have this thing out next to Turin, and it looks far more competitive with Turin than Sapphire Rapids is with Genoa. And that last stuff I talked about, the dynamics of what's been causing Intel's delays recently, and why they might or might not have them in the future, that's something to watch. Because if you ask me, there's really three outcomes to Intel's future right now that are pretty distinct over the next 3 years, right? There's the best case scenario where the design teams get their stuff together, they start launching home run after home run, and the foundries are so far ahead of schedule that they actually beat TSMC in a couple years with their 18 or 16 angstrom nodes, right? That's the best case scenario. There's, of course, the worst case where the design teams just continue to have tons of problems. It just turns out that everything's too complicated, that it's hard to coordinate all these tiles together, and they have tons of issues with that. The foundries really shouldn't have been as excited about their future. It was misplaced confidence that they had some wins recently, but they're going to fall farther behind TSMC. That's the worst case scenario. And then there's the best case scenario that I think could actually happen in the middle here, where the design teams get better, but not perfect. But Intel's foundries, because now they have enough funding, actually catch up to TSMC. There is a scenario where this happens. And I have heard some of Intel's customers say that, there's two reasons Intel is making their fabs treat their internal design teams like their external customers. It is to force them to do good work so they don't have to fix it for them, but it's also because they could be preparing their foundries to start making competitors' products if their own designs keep falling flat. And this is something to watch. And I know there will be some people that will jump in the comments and say it almost sounds like Intel's preparing to spin off their foundries, but at least right now, I don't think that's their plan at all. They just know that the external foundry operating model is what makes TSMC hit its milestones on time and what makes its customers like AMD make sure their designs work before trying to make them at TSMC. Right now, I believe that's their plan, and it's a plan that sounds like it's starting to work. It might actually make Diamond Rapids, which is the big one, the big kahuna. I said the amount of threads it has is complicated. For a reason. It is a radical new architecture. These types of improvements they're making could make it come out at Zen 6's launch or before it, and that would really be a return to form for Intel. But until then, there's a lot more stuff coming out that needs to go well, because they're going to have to compete with Zen 5, and it is no slouch. But yeah, when it comes to Zen 5 and all these other products, I'm just going to have to talk about that in other videos. Don't worry, I'm working on Zen 5 leaks. I'm actually working on some AMD laptop information as well, like what's going on. Are they going to take or lose market share this year? And I'm also working on some NVIDIA stuff as well. But because my next guest for Broken Silicon is Wendell from Level 1 Techs, and we're going to be talking all about Sapphire Rapids and Granite Rapids, I thought this leak should come out first. And yeah, Wendell's coming on Broken Silicon again. If you are a patron, you'll be able to ask him and me questions right now and until we start recording this weekend. So make sure you don't miss the Patreon if you have an extra $2 a month even, because we really can't do this without our patrons, and there really is so much content there for you if you do support us. And otherwise, well, for everybody else, just thank you for watching.